In the beginning, there was only Goldbrands and company. And then there was Chickering. Those were the first 2 days of creation, and all came after. Ah, for real though, what was in the beginning? Well, nothing, right? I mean, we can't. Whether it's a big banger, or whether it's last Thursdayism, whatever the creation story is, we can't see beyond it. And in a way, that's kind of what it is. That you can speculate as to what Big G is, but you can't fully know because that's what it is, right? I mean, we can talk about we can talk about C in the present. Consciousness is this and consciousness is that. And one of the big problems that we face here is that the word doesn't mean anything. It is a stand-in for God, but it's also a question about what are we doing as far as agency goes. And that, in fact, is a huge debate. The debate over free will and determinism, constraints and affordances. And they both exist. The funny thing is, it's actually a choice. And there may be some points at which you would want to choose a deterministic outlook upon things. And I think that a deterministic outlook, determinism, is quite fitting with mechanism, right? I mean, they're rather synonymous, aren't they? And that, if you were dealing with a mechanistic system, you may use a deterministic type of thinking. Seems adequate to me. But when you're dealing with biological systems, wow, this is where you really understand the importance of mutual causality and dependent co-arising. Okay, I mean, there's a reason why those terms have been around so long. Okay, and there's a reason why science is failing to meet the needs of understanding life. All right, so I just wanted to make a little video to share with people what I'm doing and what I'm thinking about these things. Okay, there's no way to talk about huge issues in 60 seconds. I feel like, as far as like a reel or short, we can make these TikToks, I guess, that are up to 10 minutes, but I don't have that kind of audience. So I'll just make this for posterity and say, what came first? Intelligence? Is intelligence primary? Well, that's the big no-no. That's not allowed in science. Okay, that is creationism. The idea that there was intelligent design. Okay, yet when we talk about consciousness, there's two primary, way different things that people are talking about. They're talking about mind, this all the way from mind, even is it in the brain, outside the brain, it's created by the brain, where does it extend to? All these neuroscience type of questions, but mainly this whole thing extends all the way to panpsychism, that mind is primary, that consciousness is primary, and this whole type of idea is associated with intelligence in nature. Okay, but that is completely confuddled with this other, in mixing it up with this other aspect of consciousness, which is that the word is practically used to mean that I'm conscious right now. So I'm consciously deciding to talk to you, whereas it's an unconscious beating of the heart. You know what I mean? I'm unconsciously breathing while I'm consciously talking. Right, that's how we practically use the word, which then is kind of the opposite of saying that, oh, mind is primary and consciousness is primary, because you see what I'm saying? We're saying two conflicting things here. If you're saying that the heart beating is unconscious and the talking is consciousness, okay, and for that side of the conversation, you can see why Hammerhoff and Penrose's orc theory is so critical. I mean, you can't really to be rigorous in this day and age, how can we talk about that aspect of consciousness and not talk about those guys? Because they're making a very valid point that anesthesia knocks somebody out. They ain't conscious anymore. I mean, that's how we use the term, right? So we got an issue with how we even use the term that we should address. So consciousness, what does consciousness mean? Well, it means whatever anyone wants it to mean, obviously. Okay, it doesn't have a meaning that's collectively agreed upon, and this is the language game aspect of not just language usage, but whole civilizational structure in societies. I mean, we play in these language games with words where they don't mean anything unless we agree upon that collectively. That's what words are all about, and they carry many different meanings. But there's a big difference between consciousness as far as what do I do with it and what does it do? Okay, and I'm sure there's more technical ways that we could speak of that. I mean, we can talk about the priors and the posteriors, and we can talk about, we can use a lot of different terminologies for this, okay? But I'll just stick with that. I mean, there's even the standard, is it a verb or a noun, way to look at this, okay? But let's just stick with this idea that when a lot of people are asking, what does consciousness do for me? What am I doing consciousness? I mean, another way to think about this in the panpsychist term is that, oh, consciousness is creating everything. Okay, but is there a step in between that we could focus on to say, should we expect to see any type of results? Okay, and that's what I want to suggest is that this ties the two together. Okay, because consciousness, as far as agency and decision making, is the conscious behavior. I'm consciously moving my hand around and talking, and is the universe conscious? Well, there has to be some link there. So if we go back to the beginning, if consciousness doesn't do anything and it is emergent, then yes, certainly it's not primary, right? Is intelligence primary? Okay. And is there's a lot of ways that this spins off as far as how intelligence creates things. Okay, how does intelligence create? Well, it's then coupled with yin and yang, which is entropy and entropy. And if you're willing to accept that intelligence is just plain present at the start, and then you simply add yin and yang, a creative centripetal force and a dissipative centrifugal force, okay, then it seems to basically add up to any type of physics that you would want. And you're welcome to check out my website and see the papers on gravity, consciousness, and all this other stuff too. All right, so this is the debate that I'm dealing with these days, you guys. Okay, you listen to a lot of people talking about consciousness, and there's just so many thinkers out there. There's so many different ideas, but I don't hear anyone talking about consciousness doing anything. Okay, and the problem, I left a comment on this one video today saying, hey, man, I gotta just tell you guys, you're stuck in this Western mechanistic modality because they were talking about, Matt Segall was talking about people that are scientists, mechanistic thinkers, or I believe he was talking about mechanists and materialists, but they were emerging out of a Cartesian dualist camp to begin with. Okay, and he was making a valid point. I mean, this is always the valid point. Is it whoever we listen to, you listening to me right now, me listening to them, anyone, you can only take the information within the context of the position that someone is at. You can rationally assume that someone has been informed within the conditions of their life and, for instance, the place where they work too and the people they hang out with. Show me the company you keep and I'll tell you the man. You know what I mean? Like I watch all of Matt Segall, not all, I watch a lot of Matt Segall's podcasts because I enjoy his work and I see the people that he hangs out with and where he lives, and I know he came from Florida and lives in California, and he probably didn't grow up on the streets or anything, and none of that is an attack in any way. It's just you could make rational assumptions around why a person might form the way that they think based on the conditions in which they have lived in. And in a way, this is what Lamarckianism is all about, okay? Because neo-Darwinism is a failure. That is determinism. It didn't explain how biology actually works. Okay, and Lamarckianism is much more than epigenetics. Okay, it's the terrain synthesis. It's how we are entwined with the environment, the fluid genome, the mind, body, spirit, okay, the algotype, phenotype, genotype. These are one thing. Okay, mind and body dualism is just a joke to begin with. And actually, Descartes didn't invent this in my mind. In my mind, it's actually a result of mechanistic thinking, in that with the use of language and in tool making and then the the creation of gadgetry, and then finally the use of money to completely abstract us from nature, we easily can compartmentalize and reductionize everything to the epitome of where we are completely disconnected from nature 100%, to the point where we have a society that's not based on nature. Philosophy has no connection to needing to explain the fundamental principles of nature in such an extent as to say that there is some degree of reciprocity here. Karma is a term that's been around a long time, right? I happen to sit down with the LLMs myself and turn the principle of reciprocity into actionable physics. We can do these things today, all right? Again, you can sit down with these tools and say, I would like to create an entire physics, serious physics, that you're going to be mapping against every major physicist's work today to test, and you're going to put to the test of predicting galactic rotation curves, aurora spectral analysis, the spark data, the fine structure constant, the Clay problems. You're going to do all that stuff with it with these tools. Okay, that's what we can do right now. But the way I do it is I start with first principles, which is intelligence came first, and yin and yang, the So Yin school of yin and yang, and the five elements. And when I built the theory of life and the coherence covenant for health and wellness, the climate papers, the five elements, and then further going into other numerological stuff that adds up to biospheric instances. This is very important for biological sciences. But for physics, we stay rooted in these very core principles that evolve into the serious mathematics that's then replicable in chemistry and in other cosmology. You know what I'm saying? Physics is obviously, it's heavy duty stuff. Leads to not just the papers on gravity, the plasma propulsion, to the Z-pinch thrusters, to the free energy devices, to the, oh my goodness, you name it. It's amazing how much stuff you can create by using the tools that are available right now. But again, once again, to reiterate, starting with the first principles ontology, okay? And the thing about translating this age-old, literally, age-old, ontology about yin and yang as the creation forces, okay, is that centropy has been talked about. Entropy is not even completely defined as only dissipation in the second law, but that's what I'm doing in modifying the second law, is to say what many have said, which is that, obviously many have spoken about neg entropy. Neg entropy is a terrible word, right? And no one went to actually formalize the constructive term. Okay, love Friston's work, Free Energy Principle, Martin Picard and Narusha Murugan with their energy resistance principle. That's great. And then Bashara Saheli with his inductance principle. Well, he wrote about the inductive principle. It was created by a Japanese man, I believe. And then he added some coherence terminology he's been developing with ChatGPT. And this was like 6 months ago when I was looking at that stuff. But anyway, that's what I use as my lineage progression. Okay, you know what I'm saying? Going from Schrodinger up through Prigogine and the dissipative structures, Friston, Mei Wan Ho as well, of course. But none of them fully formalized the constructive term, centropy. Even Dan Winter, my man, uses the term neg entropy. Okay, and centropy is simply the opposite of entropy, and it is directly saying that entropy is the dissipative side of the second law, but it's also saying that that's explosion, that that's centrifugal. Okay, and these are principles that scale, unlike the strong and weak nuclear force, because I don't know what the heck those are around here at this level. They don't scale. Electromagnetism, yeah, I mean, it definitely scales, but the way that we can't even model gravity at the quantum scale, but here at our scale, gravity is like, unless I'm getting shocked by some, you know what I mean? Gravity is the force that I'm dealing with, as well as some other forces like aging, right? Time. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Intelligence, centropy, entropy scales at every single level. And again, you check out the physics. I've got all this stuff documented already, you know. And and I'm not a physicist. I'm just over here fucking around with this stuff. I'm a philosopher. I'm a farmer. Okay. I'm here to say that I listen to a lot of cognitive scientists and philosophers, and they ain't talking about cows and climate and COVID. And I'm like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Like all these dead philosophers. That's great. That's so cool. I love to study that stuff. I love to read those books. I love to read me some fucking Whitehead and Hegel, all of it. Nietzsche, can't wait to read Nietzsche. That's so cool, man. But we're living in a living world here where the climate is real, and this whole thing where people like don't even try to talk to each other on the two sides of the climate narrative. What is going on, you guys? Don't you think that mirrors other things? Yeah, like, yeah, the red and blue in society, but also creationism versus scientism, materialism versus mysticism, you know, determinism versus free will. You see what I'm saying? Intelligence cannot exist as primary when you have a religion called scientism, okay? And when you have a belief system based on the other side being wrong, we got a fucked up society already. So that's what I've been working on lately. Thanks for watching. I've made so many videos and haven't posted them. Maybe I'll actually post this one today. I mean, over the how long has it been since I made videos? It's been quite a while. I have made a lot of videos, but my last 6 months has been extremely intense. I wrote a book, and then I got into working with the LLMs, which turned into writing these papers, and then it turned into creating about 20 APIs and apps and websites and educational platforms. And wow, it's been really intense. At this point, I'm hanging on a shoestring till I figure out what's next, and I'm just fucking thankful to be alive and right here, and I'm just thrilled that life is where it's at. You know, aneutronic fusion and plasma propulsion and anti-gravity and wormholes to philosophy this and philosophy that, and AI is conscious or not, and we can use Cloud Code to build the whole, all that stuff. It's all amazing, okay? It's all amazing as well as so much more. What's the most amazing of all? My buddy had a kid the other day. That's cool. All right. You know, children, life. I've got amazing soil health right out here in the yard. Booming out here in a place that people call a desert. I grew a forest. And I'll leave you with that. Thanks for watching. Centropy Project.